everybody. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion and the Garage. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton is with me. Peter and I were just saying, the year is flying past. It's literally flying by. I don't know if that's because we're getting older.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's got something to do with it. Something to do with your physiological clock or something. March 22 it is today, middle of the week. Ah, yes. My son, youngest, would be interested in this one. 1931, William Shatner. Canadian, I never knew he was Canadian. Canadian author, singer, director, and actor. Don't think he missed anything, did he? Star Trek. T.J. Hooker. I remember that. He was a policeman or something in T.J. Hooker. And then he did that quirky thing called Boston Legal, which was very clever as a TV show. He was born in Montreal, Quebec, on this day in 1931. But wait, 2033, by coincidence, this very day, James T. Kirk, science fiction captain of the USS Enterprise of Star Trek fame, was born. But could that be a coincidence? Who knows? William Hanna, American animator, Tom and Jerry, Scooby-Doo, founder of the Hanna-Barbera Studios, dies at the age of 90. That was in 2001. Reese Witherspoon, who is very nice. I like Reese Witherspoon, 1976, American actress. Pleasantville, Legally Blonde. Ah, yes, Legally Blonde. A very clever title. Born in New Orleans on this day in 1976. Nicholas Flanel. Yeah, French scribe and alchemist, believed to have created the Philosopher's Stone. Dies at 87. 1406 was the year. James Stewart is inducted into the Army on this day in 1941. He becomes the first major American movie star to wear a military uniform in World War II. Clark Gable also wore the uniform, but that came along a little bit later on. But 1944, that was 41 when he joined. 44, American movie star Jimmy Stewart flies his 12th combat mission, leading the 2nd Bomb Wing to an attack on Berlin, close to the end of the war. Stephen Sondheim, American Tony Award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, lyricist for West Side Story. And, funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. Gypsy. So many great shows. A Little Night Music, I think he did it also. 1930 he was born, and he died in 1921. Townspeople of Fulda, Germany. 1349 was the year. The reason I mention it is that the day is remembered for the massacre of Jews. This was Germany, many years before Hitler, 1349. And the reason they killed all the Jews in the town was that they were blamed for the Black Death, the plague, pandemic, call it what you like. Suppose it's funny how people look around for someone to blame. Someone to blame. Andrew Lloyd Webber, British theatrical composer, Jesus Christ Superstar, Phantom of the Opera, Cats. He was born in London in 1948. Andrew Lloyd Webber, 36 on the same day, marries singer-dancer Sarah Brightman, who was 23. An auspicious day for Andrew Lloyd Webber, Lord Webber as he is now. Roger Whittaker was born in Kenya. Last Farewell, Durham Town, and lots of wonderful songs. Streets of London does a fantastic version of Streets of London, and he whistles as well.
The Mexican whistler is...
The Mexican whistler. And have you ever heard him do the Elizabeth Serenade?
No.
That's great. He died. Roger Whittaker has died, but I can't tell you when. But born in Kenya in 1936. First patent for lasers granted in 1960. Well, without the laser, it was a very significant development, and not all that long ago. Indira Gandhi resigns as Prime Minister of India in 1977, and a guy I spoke to, and I've always enjoyed listening to him, Wolf Blitzer. Wolf Blitzer, it's a great name. American television journalist and broadcaster. He was born on this day in 1948. Happy birthday, Wolf. Wolf Blitzer. Now, I want to talk to you about something here. I want to float something. Now, you will probably want to rip my ears off, but I really think there is no harm in talking. Freedom of thought is probably more important than freedom of speech. Because once they've stopped us from speaking, they will want to stop us from thinking. Australia's financial crisis can't really be ignored, and we do have an awful lot of debt which can't be written off easily, if at all. But I have a solution. I know for the country, like lots and lots of households around the country, there's too much month left over at the end of the money. Governments will have to learn to live within their limits, spending only what they can reasonably collect from the people. You can't keep growing your expenditure while you keep slugging us with the disincentive of higher and higher taxes. It just won't work. Won't happen. We need a new source of income. And the only way to do that, is to be clever. Develop a new income stream. You know, we could name our own price if we were to establish, after the inevitable, lengthy, fiery debate, if we could establish a global repository for nuclear waste. I don't know, I was thinking to myself, what would one charge? I would think $200 billion a year would not be out of the ballpark. A reasonable expectation would be in that sort of area. Now, at the moment, we can't afford the current and indeed future welfare bill, particularly. We are an ageing society. Then, of course, there is the defence bill. There is health, already in serious trouble. And, of course, the big one, the NDIS. Do you see what I mean? The current tax base is just too small. All we have to do is find a relatively small piece of outback Australia, totally safe, geologically stable, remote, and appropriate. And for very little investment and risk, we could secure the future prosperity of Australia and its people. A handful of people, Aboriginals perhaps, might object, but it would be a great deal for them in particular, frankly. But my guess is that these simple people, the Aboriginals, will be weaponized by the left. They'll be used by the left, just exactly as they are being used right now in Kimba. It's quite irrational. You can't put a low-level waste repository in a absolutely scientifically engineered, safe place. But we can store that same low-level, mostly medical waste, which we can't, of course, do without. We can store that low-level waste in lift wells, at the bottom of lifts, and stairwells, and cellars. Damp, certainly not engineered for the purpose. Cellars all over the CBD of Adelaide. Mostly I'm talking about North Terrace, round the medical precinct. Now that's safe, is it? You see, it has absolutely no logic attached to it, and yet people are still debating the depository or repository at Kimba. Again, we find ourselves, this great nation, blessed with some of the most stable geology in the world. Blessed this time with an opportunity, not a resource, but an opportunity. And if we simply don't listen to the flat earthers and people who have a completely different and conflicting agenda, and we just get on with it, we can drastically cut government spending, but I don't think the government has the chutzpah to do that. I mean, I can't even persuade them publicly or humiliate them into getting rid of the consultants and all the needless political advertising. But that would only save a few 100 million. And what we're talking about here is an income stream for centuries to come. I'd like to think that we could all sort of think about it calmly and sensibly, without having to spend 2 or 3 years arguing about it. Something else too which I find interesting, the National Aboriginal Art Gallery of Australia. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there are Aboriginal centres and art centres in most cities of Australia. We have this beautiful building down in the CBD called Tandanya. Then on North Terrace, where the old hospital, the old Royal Adelaide Hospital was, there is a huge cultural centre, Aboriginal Cultural Centre. This one is planned for Alice Springs. They want to establish in Alice Springs. It's been in the pipeline for quite a long time. They have earmarked almost $200 million for its establishment, completion. The Commonwealth acquired the old Anzac Oval in Alice Springs. Endless discussions and arguments and disagreements. All of the delays and the frustrations mostly coming from Aboriginal people. It seems that not one of the various factions involved, who are all entitled to a say, can agree. There's an impasse. Some say it's a sacred site. Well, people used to play football on it and cricket. Others say you can't face the building that way, never telling us why. You have to face it this way, but again, they don't say why. Or that's sort of secret men's business or secret somebody's business. I don't understand it. But when somebody else is paying the bill, people are entitled to ask the question, why? Others say it's the wrong design because it doesn't look like an Aboriginal building. Well, what is an Aboriginal building? What would an Aboriginal building look like? As far as I understand, apart from Whirlies, the Aboriginals never built anything. And that's not a critical comment. They found a very sustainable and happy way of life, but it didn't involve building cities and towns and skyscrapers and 3-bedroom homes with a granny flat. It wasn't like that. You can see where all of this is going, can't you? The voice thing is sort of where I'm leading. With the voice, we would have the same endless arguments, discussion, conflict, and controversy over just about anything that was put before the group. Now that's what I believe, anyway. There's somebody who says, Jeremy, you're wrong there. Please inform me, educate me. You can't run a government like that. You really can't run anything like that. I don't know what these people are really thinking of. Working from home is becoming quite an issue, which we'll talk about in the next couple of days. And also something else that I noticed that I find quite sad. The local newsagent is about to become really a thing of the past. I can't blame it totally on any one thing, really. I was talking to a few people and they said, oh, well, we don't buy magazines anymore. Oh, we used to buy lots of magazines. You know, my husband used to buy Popular Mechanics and I'd buy Women's Weekly or Woman's Day or New Idea. Then, of course, there was the daily newspaper, and sometimes we were really well served. We had the morning advertiser and we had the afternoon news. We just don't feel the need to buy a paper. The little local newsagent down here in the suburb where I live in Adelaide, down at the Burnside Village, I've known for the last 40-something years. 40, getting on more like 50. And I think there have only been 2 owners of the place. And sadly, it's closed. Nothing more sad than walking past and seeing that shop that was once really a very important part of people's lives, just closed. China have announced that they'll spend more on the South Pacific, on diplomats and information. Well, I guess you could probably expect that to be better described as propaganda. Or it might just be described these days in the modern language as influencing. Influencing. Now, I don't know why, if that's a concern to Australia, and it seems to be, I don't know why we don't recommission Radio Australia. Radio Australia, which broadcast to our region very effectively for more than 50 years. Now, the government should tell the ABC to immediately recommission the old Radio Australia, which broadcast into the Asia Pacific. But they'd have to be a little bit careful of one thing, because the ABC would not be able to broadcast any of its current, well, broadcasters perhaps enthusiastically as they do at the moment, their LGBTIQ stuff. Because, of course, that is illegal in that part of the world, or maybe that was the reason Radio Australia was cancelled in the first place. I don't know. It'd be interesting to think about that. And I'll leave you with this. Caught my eye. Professor Gary Banks. I've spoken to him over the years many times. Very interesting, authoritative man on his subject. Former head of the Productivity Commission, who have just handed down a 500-page manifesto of all of the things that we could be doing and should be doing but aren't doing. But Professor Gary Banks has a very good perspective on this thing called productivity. Australia, he says, is going backwards. It'll be interesting to see if the government chooses to ignore the professor. Admittedly, he's not the head of the Productivity Commission anymore, but he certainly was for a great many years. He says, we have walked away from our natural advantages in plentiful, cheap, reliable energy. How long have we been saying that, Pete, in the court of public opinion?
Long enough. Yeah.
Long enough. And we have turned our backs, he goes on to say, we have turned our backs on many of the other advantages that we have had in the past. And if that was not an indictment of the present system, set of policies, I don't know what is. Thank you so much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate your participation, and we'll look forward to being with you tomorrow. And I don't know whether you tune in at 9 o'clock. We post a new Court of Public Opinion around 9 o'clock every single morning, 5 mornings a week. But you can obviously view it anywhere in the world. You can listen to it as a podcast anywhere in the world, and of course, any time of the day or night. We'll be up with another edition tomorrow. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.